My name is Janella. I'm with Premier Community Health, the Employee Assistance Programming. So we are your EAP provider. I was here a few months ago and was able to do this training for the fire department. And so I'm excited to come back and also present this to you all today. So I wanted to look at some things that we're going to talk about. Hopefully I will not go over. That's my plan. So our agenda, we're going to start with triggers because that's kind of where escalation starts, and then thus the need for de-escalation. So I like to start at the beginning, like what's the root cause of all this stuff? And then we're going to look at what happens in escalation, and then we'll move on to actually de-escalating, what that need is, and then we'll look at some different tools that you can use. They'll all be very, very practical. We could get into some of the theories and models, but I think sometimes at the end of the day, you just want to know what you should and should not do. So if you want more models, they're there, and I'm happy to send them to you if you want to know conceptually why. And then we'll do a little bit of practice towards the end. So escalation starts with a triggering event. There's something that happens, or even it could be like a disposition that we tend to have that kind of makes us ready to escalate a situation. And there's three different areas that I want to speak to specifically where we can become triggered about things, or they are triggers for us. It's important to know that those triggers are very individual. So something that might be hard for me to handle or might set me off pretty quickly or irritate me may not be that for you. So the three things that we want to look at, and these are situations that when you're looking at them, it's good to know that someone may begin to escalate if they're experiencing those, and even for yourself as well. So first thing is life crisis. So think about someone loses their job, someone's going through a divorce, or if they have to file bankruptcy. So if they're going, or if they lose someone, so grief. So if they're in a very vulnerable, stressed state because of a life crisis, that could be an environment where you could see someone getting triggered and thus escalating. So as you guys are listening to people that you interact with, it's good to be aware and kind of have your antennae up so that if they're in those situations, how you deal with them becomes really important. The second state is chronic stress. Most of our lives, especially what we were realizing is post-COVID. COVID's a great thing to look at to see it all impacted us in different ways. But most of us dealt with chronic stress, at least during COVID. So we saw a lot of people, and even still we're seeing people getting triggered or getting agitated about situations that really aren't as big as what we're making it, because we're in this state of chronic stress. Now, while COVID, for all intents and purposes, tends to be over, but it does speak to some of the changes that we've had to deal with through COVID and thus after COVID, and just our general lives. So if you find that you live in a chronically stressed state, it's going to make you more likely to become agitated. So think about if you're trying to make ends meet, you're moving paycheck to paycheck, or if you're caring for a loved one, or if in the workplace you have a high stress job, a high demand job. Being in that pressure cooker of life is going to make you more prone to become agitated about things. And then finally, just the daily occurrences of life. There's things that just on a regular basis can kind of get us a little bit annoyed. Anybody get irritated when they're in traffic? I have the t-shirt. I get irritated. I was driving to work this morning before I saw you guys, like, oh, I'm going to run by the office really quickly before I come here. And traffic was awful, and seemingly for no reason. I'm like, why are we driving so slowly? And so things like that just start your day in a negative space, right? So, or there's, if you have kids, there's things that our kids can do. I have 4 children who are now, they're in their 20s now, so they're not children, but they always will be to me. And so there's just things that they can do. It's like, man, you've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm thinking you were going to move past this. No, not yet. Okay, all right, we're still there. So just being aware of those things that can be harder for you to manage. And I'm sure you guys seem like a great, great group. You don't get triggered by anything, right? It's just me. I'm the only one that has these triggers. But it's good to be aware of your own personal triggers and how you tend to respond to those. Anybody want to talk about triggers? No, I'm not going to make you telling yourself. All right, so what are some early warning signs of agitation? So once we have these triggering events or even this triggering disposition, we tend to become agitated by that point. And so when you are monitoring yourself, or if you are in a situation that you're observing, then you want to be aware that I need to recognize when someone's becoming agitated. Again, these are pretty obvious things. Some things are overt, things that you can see and like, okay, I can observe this and tell that someone's becoming agitated. So you guys talk to me. What visible signs of agitation have you seen? Don't all talk at once.
Body language, like crossed arms.
Crossed arms. Rolling your eyes.
Tone of voice.
Tone of voice, yeah. Or acting differently than you've behaved before. So if I'm a very vocal person and upbeat person, when I'm annoyed, I'm quiet. So it's more so that, oh, she's not behaving like herself. And that is more of a sign that something's wrong. And usually I'm not happy, or I'm hungry, but because there is that too. But for the most part, and so yeah, so people can bang things. They, can be aggressive, thinking about their proximity to you. They can invade your space. Those are some obvious things that you can see. Or if someone's yelling, you said tone of voice is really, really important to see. There's also some covert signs. Again, things that like, I kind of have to infer. One big one that I just said is I'm not acting like myself. My behavior's a little bit different. Maybe I'm passive aggressive. Maybe I'm not saying exactly what I want to say, but I'm going around it and I'm expecting you to get a clue about what I'm saying. So those are some covert signs that I'm a little bit agitated. Think about legs shaking, that's more overt, I can see. So anytime we can see someone having a little bit extra nervous energy about a situation, then they could possibly be a little bit agitated. And the more you know people, the more you'll know their tells. So in the workplace, we can also see some things more directly. Again, negative change in behavior, or just honestly, different changes in behavior, increased passive-aggressive actions, verbal threats, and those something in the workplace we take very seriously. I know you guys do as well. We cannot just say things and then respond and say, oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it that way. So we have to be careful and take those threats seriously. And also when you see people like in those high stress situations, they begin to feel hopeless. There's been a big trending data about compassion fatigue with people, with burnout. And so we're starting to see these things in the workplace that can lead to us being more agitated, to us being more stressed, and thus acting out of that behavior. Any questions about agitation? It's pretty easy peasy, pretty obvious, but I think the big thing is that we just need to be aware. We need to be on guard and look for those signs and situations that can lead to agitation. All right, so now let's move on to escalation. I loved this photo when I saw it because it just shows that we are gunning the engine, or the engine is gunned. The engine is moving up and is getting in the red. And so my ability to control my emotions, my ability to think clearly and problem solve when things escalate, it tends to go away. So some things happen physically to us when things are escalating. The time to deal with ourselves is actually before escalation. The time to deal with our attitudes and our feelings are in the agitation stage, in a perfect, where I want to be world, even before that. But we're going to just be realistic and say, okay, agitation for me says this is a warning sign, something's up. I need to figure out why I'm agitated. I need to observe the situation. Why are these people agitated? What's going on? So escalation, now my sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in. Now I feel threatened, and now I feel like I need to respond. And so sometimes how we respond we feel that this is the only way that I can survive this situation, or this is the only way that I can get what I need / want out of this situation. So that's when things start to escalate. So when you think of escalation, think of threatened. I feel threatened, and so I feel like I have to protect myself. So what types of situations of escalation have you guys seen in your line of work? I'm sure in sports. in sports is probably a big thing. Did you have any?
Yeah.
I know I put you on the spot.
The first week we had 2 coaches that had different understandings of how a rule was supposed to be applied.
Mm-hmm.
So I was refereeing, so I had to try to like meet at halftime and talk it out with both of them.
Yeah.
Explain it from both sides.
Right. So there was just a difficulty seeing the other side. I apologize for the call out, but I'm a sports mom, and so having watched 15 years of sports, I've just seen a lot of escalating situations, whether it's with a ref or whether it's with another parent that may have said something about your child. So in those situations, I peg sports as an escalating situation, an agitation situation, because it's something that can just happen. So just being aware of those situations, unless anybody else wants to share an escalating situation that they've had to referee or had to deal with. I won't call out anybody else, I promise. Well, you know what it is. Just think about what that escalating situation is and how it was handled. Maybe after the presentation today, you'll see, well, I probably could have dealt with that a little bit differently, or you know what? I instinctually dealt with that pretty well. So you may feel pretty good about it. So that's our agitation. That's us getting more escalated. The important thing about escalation to remember, as I kind of put a ribbon on that, is that we cannot problem solve when we are escalating. We cannot use the executive parts of our brain. So when we're trying to talk to someone who's in an escalated space, it's really difficult to correct their line of thinking in that space. And we'll look at this a little bit later too as we move into de-escalation. Our goal is to just get them to a space where they can begin to use the upper parts of their brain. They can hear what you're saying and they can begin to have that dialogue. So you mentioned waiting till halftime to have that conversation was a really good idea, because in the moment, trying to tell either one of them what the best solution was is probably not the best. We need to cool off a little bit. So you guys can see the 3 definitions of de-escalation on the screen. We want to minimize, it does minimize escalation or conflict. So when we can step in as early as possible, it helps to minimize how much it escalates. So the sooner the better. Communication, empathy, instinct, and coping strategies. When we employ de-escalation, our communication's better. It's more clear, more understanding, and it helps us to show empathy for the other person. That's been a big buzzword here lately. So empathy says, I'm going to look at it from your point of view. I'm going to put myself in your position. Think about who you are as a person and understand why you may feel that way. And I really want to focus on that part of that definition, because many times we just say, okay, put myself in their shoes. Like how I would process this situation, but we're different. So how I might process the same situation is different from how you might process that exact same situation. So I have to process it by knowing Susie is like this, so I can see how she would get to this conclusion. So that's what empathy is. Also gives us better coping strategies and helps to reduce the intensity of a conflict. It can help cool things down before it gets out of hand. Now, I have to give this disclaimer. De-escalation is not always possible. So why are we having this training? Womp womp. But so the goal is to get to it as soon as possible, so we don't get to that point where I can't de-escalate. I can't talk you off the ledge. You're there. I'm trying and it's not working. So that's why we want to get started on this as soon as possible, because there does become a point that you're not hearing any reason, not even hearing, I'm allowing you to speak and I'm listening and it's still not going well. So I do have to put that disclaimer out there that You don't have to stay in there and say, no, 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 I'm going to de-escalate you. I'm going to do it. No, you have to think about your own safety. You guys deal with a lot of different people in the Parks and Recs department, so thank you for that. And your safety is really important as well. And that person's safety, it's not good for them to stay in that space. Kind of obviously, benefits of de-escalation, it promotes awareness, and this awareness is going to be self-awareness, I think is what a lot of it is. It starts with that, us being aware of how we are interacting with other people. Sometimes we can do or say things flippantly and not really take into account how it's impacting others, so that's really important. So building awareness and building awareness around us. We talked about improved communication. I was at a training the other day and the lady said, forgive the loudness. She goes, well, I mean, I'm just a loud person. So, I mean, I just tell people when they start, like, I'm just like that. Like, okay. So I'm called to adjust to you. That's fine. That's fine. It's totally fine. And so it's just like, we're all different, but we're all working together and we can adjust our personalities and communication styles. So de-escalation's better communication. Greater productivity. When we have less conflict in the workplace, we can do more things, especially do them together. And when you have different mindsets and different ideas flowing and there's not something clogging up the communication valve, then we tend to be more productive and, of course, an overall happier work environment. It was nice to come in and see you guys all talking and laughing, so you seem to really enjoy one another and what you do, which is great. And so I'm sure it's not always perfect all the time. So having these strategies can help keep us in that space. So what are some barriers to de-escalation? What happens if we don't de-escalate things, or why is that? A lack of empathy. My example of my friend in my previous training just this week who said, I'm just like that. That's just me, so you have to deal with it. And I can't see your side. I'm not seeing this rule the way you see it, so my side is right. If anyone's ever watched Dr. Phil, he always talked about being right fighters. Don't be a right fighter. And I just thought, I'm gonna steal that, Dr. Phil, from you, but I will cite my source. And so sometimes when we just stay in our corners, I do counseling sometimes too, so I've got marriage counseling. That happens a lot in marriages. We just want to defend our space. We don't want to see it from the other side. And then we can be defensive, especially in supervisory situations. If you ever have to correct an employee for something that they're not doing, and maybe you're trying to be as constructive as you can and say it well, sometimes we just get a little bit defensive when someone says we're not doing something right. And so we start to make excuses. We start to blame other people, situations, the manager. So it's just easy, it's natural for us to become defensive when someone brings something to us, or if we're disrespectful, of course, or shaming a person. So I watch my kids all the time. It's like, well, you did this. No, you did it. Or you're terrible. You're terrible. It's like, okay. We're escalating here. This is not going well. We're being disrespectful. One of the big ones that I like to bring up is preoccupation. So sometimes this passive, aggressive, or honestly just negligent attitude that we can have when someone is starting to get upset or something that they're passionate about, which is causing them to get agitated and upset, we can just kind of be like apathetic to it, like, not really paying attention, not noticing that they're escalating. That within itself sometimes can make it a more escalating situation. If I feel like you're not understanding or you care about what I'm upset about or passionate about, then I'm going to get more upset about it. So sometimes that passivity, that apathy to what people are dealing with can also be a barrier to de-escalation. It's going to end up doing the opposite. So some things that we can talk about, on the plane is, so de-escalation starts with me. Before I can help anybody else, I have to put the mask on me. So you guys have to work with people a lot, whether you're a supervisor or you're out in the community. But de-escalation has to start with me. So I have to be a person that's in a more de-escalated state, whether I'm going into a situation or someone is saying something that I'm struggling with. It starts with me. Some things that you can do on a regular basis to keep yourself in what we call in the health world is a rest and digest state. Has anybody heard of that saying before? We just want to keep ourselves in a de-stressed state. So that vernacular is spread throughout all of stress management, really, is getting out of that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system space, and being in a rest and digest state. A lot of great things happen there. We talked already about problem solving. I can think clearly when I'm not in a stressed state. You guys heard about the fist brain, the hand brain vernacular? So basically, your brain, when you're stressed, that fight or flight, you're using the most basic survival parts of your brain, the back part, right back here. And so it's very simple. I have a threat, I either need to fight, or I need to run away, or I need to freeze. Now they're even adding fawn. I think we're gonna keep adding F's to that forever. But basically, our body, and the goal is I need to protect myself. And that's all I can think about. So when things are escalating, that's it, guys. That's all we can think about. And so we have to activate physically. There has to be a physical thing that we do to de-stress ourselves, to calm the body down so that the mind can work. And so these are some things that in our everyday lives that we can do just to help keep us de-stressed, and it'll make it easier for you not to escalate as quickly. And there's a whole nother presentation about this, guys, so I'm not gonna tell you all about it. Of course, it's exercise. How many minutes per week are we called to exercise? Anybody know? 150. 150 is what the CDC and all the letters. I said, I've got fitness people in here. I knew they wouldn't let me down. That we're called to do on a regular basis. But guess what? You're like, I can't do 30 minutes per week. I'm a health coach. This is what I do. I say, hey, 30 minutes a day is okay. I understand it's a struggle. Let's just do 10. Can you give me 10 minutes a day? Let's just get started with some consistency here. Actually, JAMA did a study and found that 10 minutes per day is actually does help with all-cause mortality. So they're finding there is some benefit. Eating well. This is always a struggle for me because I love to eat. I love to eat. I love food. So when I got my master's degree, I focused on nutrition because I needed to focus on nutrition for me. And I would work out, and my friend said, you can't outwork bad eating. And I said, never speak to me again. I don't like We are not friends anymore. I am so mad. What are you saying to me? This is crazy. I'm here 2 hours a day. But anyway, so eating well helps us to manage our stress levels well. We don't eat in response to stress. How many of us, have our favorite thing when we're stressed out that we want to eat to feel better? Oreo cookies and I were great friends. I have overcome, I'm better. But the main thing is sleep. They're really looking at how sleep in our everyday lives and chronic disease is really important. So the Sleep Foundation recommends 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, and that's from the time you get in the bed until the time you wake up. So you don't have to be asleep for that time, but just devoting that time to rest and sleep. So those are really good. Again, I won't bore y'all with the presentation. Oh, now I won't move. Okay, so some de-escalation techniques that are really good is deep breathing. You guys heard about this lately? It's been a big thing. I never thought breathing was that important. Not like breathing. I never thought deep breathing would really do anything, but getting back to that, activating that rest and digest part of our bodies, when we belly breathe, it actually does activate that parasympathetic part of our system that calms us down and opens up to where we can begin to think clearly and think well. So deep breathing is one. We may try that if I get time a little bit later. Another one is guided imagery. So sometimes when you're under stress, just kind of take yourself to a place that is home for you, a place that is calm and peaceful for you. Some of our classes that we do, we have people actually write what this looks like. I won't have time today. But in your free time, do this. Think about what this place is for you. And when you're really stressed, just take yourself there for a few minutes. Maybe it's a memory, time with your family, whatever you need to do to mentally have yourself calm down just a little bit. And then another one is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 census method. Have you guys heard of this one? I'm going to get it out of order because I do it every time I do this presentation. But basically, when you're in a stressful situation, this is like in the situation, this is when you look at 5 things you can see. It's a great way to distract and help your mind to focus. 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can smell. I'm getting this out of order. I'm going to read it. I always like to think I can do this and not forget it. 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. If you were writing that down, I said it really quickly. So see, touch, hear, smell, taste. And I get them out of order every time that I say that. I'm like, 5 things you can taste? No, that would not be good coping. That would not be good. So see first. All right. And then finally, our grounding techniques. So grounding techniques are things you can do in the moment that just helps you focus. So whether it's a focal point, something you see you can just focus on, whether it's just mindfulness, just being aware of where you are, physically grounding yourself to your space. A friend of mine, her grounding technique is she just holds her elbow. So when you see her, you never know she was stressed. I know she's stressed when I see her grabbing her elbow, but that's just her way to ground herself. Sometimes I'll just stop and start breathing for just a few breaths and allow myself to rethink of what's going on. So those are just a few things that you guys can try to help to de-escalate yourself. So we got a de-escalation activity. So this is the breathing. One of the things that we like to do is the 4-7-8 breathing activity. So basically you're going to inhale for a count of 4 through your nose. You'll hold that for a count of 7, and then you'll exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 8. And we're going to do that about 3 times, just for you to kind of get the gist of it. Don't inhale too quickly in this exercise, you'll get dizzy. So if I see people kind of, that's why we're sitting down, right? So that way if you get a little bit lightheaded. Now I might, fall over. We'll have to do another take. You'll have to edit that out for me. For sure. So I want you guys to get in a comfortable sitting position, feet on the floor, shoulders relaxed. You can close your eyes or not. I don't have a preference. It's up to you. So one thing we're going to get started is breathing slowly through your nose for a count of 4. So go ahead and breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7. I'm counting in my head. And now you're going to breathe out slowly for a count of 8. Now as you're breathing, we're going to do this again. I want you to belly breathe. Belly breathe. I don't want to see shoulders going up. You got to breathe deeply. Let's try that again. In through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and hold that for 7. And breathe out for 8. All right, one more time on your own. I won't count. You guys can do this yourself. You want to feel your belly expanding, not your chest rising. You want to feel your belly going out. Not the most attractive thing, but it does help to de-stress us. All right, thank you for trying that. Hopefully that's something that you feel a little bit more relaxed, hopefully not sleepy. Don't go to sleep on me, but hang in there. All right, so now let's look at self-awareness. Self-awareness we've kind of already talked about. When we're de-escalating ourselves, it's good to know how we are reacting and how we are presenting ourselves to other people. So there's some different things that we can do is to be mentally, you want to stay focused on the issue. So when there's an escalating situation and you're trying to de-escalate it, you don't want to think about all the past things. I'm a supervisor. I don't want to think about all the things that this person has done in the past. I don't want to think about anything else that's going to cloud my judgment. I just want to focus on the issue. I'm not going to bring up any personality traits or any other past issues. So I want to stay focused on the issues. That helps me. That helps them. And then physically, when it comes to self-awareness, we want to focus on our communication. How should we communicate with someone when we're trying to de-escalate them? What do you guys think?
Slow and slow.
What did you say?
Slow and slow.
Low and slow. I like that. I like the low and slow thing. We do want to use calm tones. We don't want to escalate the situation by our tone of voice, by what we're saying and how we're saying it. And we also don't want to speak too quickly because rate of speech can actually escalate things as well. What type of things we could say to someone? One of my favorite statements I love to say is, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that, because what you're saying to this person is, I want to hear, I do care about what's going on with you. I do care about that. Then also our body language becomes really, really important as well. So some really important things that you want to do is keep a distance. We don't want to be in someone's space when they're escalating. We don't want to make them feel trapped. And so you want to make sure there's a clear exit. So I don't want to block any exits if someone's getting stressed out. No, you're going to stay here. We're going to talk about this. This is important, Jimmy. We're going to do it. No. If Jimmy needs to get out, if Jimmy needs to excuse himself, then Jimmy, we'll talk about it a little bit later. So it's really important. Our body language needs to be open. You guys know the anatomically correct posture that you have. So it's just open. We're not crossing our arms. This is a closed posture. Want to be open, not threatening to them, and we want to listen to what is being said. So this is the anger iceberg, one of my favorite all-time things, because in escalation, we're usually mad about something. But what we found in science, psychology, is that anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is an alarm bell. It is the alarm that says something is wrong, something deeper is going on. So we see the anger, but what we are actually feeling are a lot of these emotions beneath. And it's really good for our own selves when we're processing ourselves, or also when you're talking with someone else. Like if they're mad, there's a deeper issue going on here. So that's when you say, tell me more about that. You may be able to get to some of this stuff here that's really going on. So the anger is just the output. This is just the effect, but there's causes here. There's causes here to what's really happening. So it's really good to be aware of that. So some things you can do is check your defense mechanism. So when you're escalating, try not to use denial, ignoring that this situation is happening. We don't want to project on others things that may have happened to us or different attitudes that we may have experiencing. Try not to withdraw from a situation and just say, you know what, I'm just not going to deal with it. I'm done. I can't handle this. And we don't want to try to rationalize why a certain thing is happening. Well, it's just because this happened, so it's not a big deal. Well, you know, that person may still be offended. And if I'm sharing with you, and if you were in the same position, you wouldn't want someone to rationalize why it happened at all. So those are just some general defense mechanisms that you want to try to be aware of, and maybe you have one that you tend to use. So maybe as I was speaking, and I didn't mention all of them, maybe something came up like, man, that's kind of me. Yeah, I can do that. I love to explain, surprise, so I will rationalize till the cows come home, like, understand, I mean, I didn't mean it, I was trying to, Okay, sometimes just saying, you're right, I'm sorry, and moving on. So we've talked a lot about de-escalating ourselves, that's where it starts. Now let's move to de-escalating other people. So now we're good, we want you to be good too. So I've said some of this already. Physically, allowing for personal space, about 3 feet. Give people about 3. Of course, during COVID, we gave everybody 6, so this was an easy thing to do. Having that open posture, but then I wanted to also add, avoid a lot of eye contact. Why do y'all think that is? Yeah, it can be confrontational. A lot of eye contact can be confrontational. Yeah. So it's not that you don't look at them at all, but you do give yourself that break and then re-engage. So don't give too, like you're staring, or it can be mistaken as glaring sometimes. So not too much eye contact. And then verbally, some ways to de-escalate, using distraction. This is really good with young people. I use this a lot with my own children when they're really upset. Distracting by changing the subject or getting them to think about something else, especially if it wasn't going all that well. So using distraction is really good. You want your conversation to be more passive, and what I mean by that is I'm not trying to prove my point. I am just listening and getting you to a space where you can begin to think more clearly. So this passive language is like, sure, I understand. I'm not giving any opinion about what you're saying. I'm just listening. And then inwardly moving to listening. This is probably the best thing you can do in de-escalation, is have good listening skills. I know we've all practiced active listening. What are some things? Shout out to me. What do we do in active listening? Don't say eye contact, because it is. That is a part of active listening. Repeat what's being said. It's called forming reflections. We love to make up stuff to just say, repeat what they say back. But you want to form that reflection like in communication, you're the sender, you're giving me information. I'm interpreting this message that you've sent me, and my reflection is me regurgitating what my understanding of what you said is. And that's where that cycle begins. And so as I'm listening, some good things like, it sounds like you're saying this. Or even, man, it must have been tough to have to walk through that. I couldn't imagine what that would feel like. Sometimes saying, I can imagine what that would feel like. No, you can't. You don't know what I'm going through. I can't imagine what that would feel like. Just leave it there. That's something we do in counseling. We don't try to tell them, I've been in your shoes, I get it. No, sometimes they feel that you don't. And then outwardly, we talked about our tone becomes really, really important in how we communicate to people. And sometimes less words are more. It's better. Less is more in this case. We don't want to say too much. Oh, I didn't put this on here, but physically moving someone to a different space. Sometimes changing their environment also helps them to think differently. Has anybody ever forgotten something that they were going to do when they walked into a room before? And they tell you, if you go back out and come back in, you'll remember. I don't know why that happens, but in this case, it just something resets in the brain. Like, oh yeah. So even in this space, sometimes taking them to a different situation can help. Oh, and finally, be a mirror. In psychology, again, it's where my undergrad is in, there are mirror neurons that we have. It's how we learn. Think about babies. Babies learn by watching, and they can grasp so many things by mirroring what we do. So as you are calm and as you are collected, they can then mirror your response. But if you're escalating, they're going to mirror that too. So your posture becomes all the more important. So there's four basic principles that we like to use when de-escalating. I think the cybersecurity, National Cybersecurity uses this. The first one is to recognize, we talked about this earlier, recognizing when an escalating situation can or is occurring. That's that awareness, be aware. And then next, assessing. What do I need to do in this situation? Sometimes it's just, okay, they may need a minute. Sometimes I do need to go and intervene. In the most strong situations, sometimes, okay, this is getting out of control pretty quickly. I may need to go get another supervisor. I may need to call 911. What do I need to do here? Is this a safe situation? Is it safe? That's more the assessment. And then I want to move to de-escalate if that's the choice that I think I'm safe to make. That's when we use all of these de-escalating techniques that we just talked about before, but we also want to make sure if we're involved in the conflict, what do we have to do first? De-escalate ourselves. Make sure that we're not in a space that we're not going to help the situation. We're going to make it worse. So de-escalate yourself, and then move to de-escalate the other person. And then if need be, you want to report. Maybe it is a situation that occurred that a supervisor needs to be involved and a report needs to be made. Maybe we need to call 911. You know your company's policy and how to handle these situations. Some companies, like my company, I can't put my hands on anybody. I cannot restrain, we're not allowed. So our recourse is to call 911. You guys may have different policies here. I don't know what your policies are when it comes to escalation and what you all need to do. unless anybody wants to enlighten the class of what you guys do in escalating situations. Pretty much that. Okay. Well, good. I'm happy we're hitting it on the nose. With this, I'm happy we're in agreement that this is what you guys need to do. So if you don't have questions, or those that work for you have questions, be sure they're aware of what needs to happen. So de-escalation to-dos, again, obvious, and we've covered this, but stay calm. We stay calm by taking some breaths, staying focused on what the issue is. Use that verbal connection. Identify their wants and feelings. As you're listening, this is where you want to try to hear. Remember that anger iceberg? Listen for some of those emotions. And they found that what really helps, actually, guys, is if we label our emotions. When I'm angry, what is it? So label it for yourself and listen for other people, what they're saying. What are they angry? What's under that anger? What are they really trying to communicate? What do they need? What do they want? You can offer choices. Say, hey, do you want to go out here and talk for a minute? Or, we can wait and talk about it a little bit later. Give them choices. They don't want to feel caged in. And you're not going to agree on everything. We're all different people. So it's okay to disagree. I think I could get a billboard and put that up and say, it's okay to disagree. Agree to disagree. And kiss. Keep it simple. You guys can figure out what the last letter is. Less is more. So keep it simple. Don't stay there forever explaining again over and over. Just keep it simple. We're just trying to get them to a place of calm. Conflict do's. Communicate face-to-face. Try to avoid sending things just through text or email. It's hard to read what people are really feeling. Up to 80% of our communication is nonverbal. That's a lot. So when we don't communicate face-to-face, there's a wide swath, a gulf of misinformation and communication that can happen. So especially in conflict needs to happen as much as you can face-to-face. Manage your emotions. So again, before you are in a conflict, if you're helping, try to assess where you are. How am I doing? Am I okay? Can I enter this situation? Am I in a place to do that? Embrace differences, focus on the present issue, understand the perspective of others. But I love this last one the most, and that's what I'll talk about. Convey the value of your relationship. So it's important that we take them away from just what it is that they're so mad about, but we remind them like, hey, we're friends, or hey, I'm your supervisor, or you've been coming to this rec center for 10 years. We want to help you. They need to understand that we're on the same team here. We're not, I'm not your enemy. I'm not going to fight here. I'm going to drop the rope. Dropping the rope. There is no rope. I have no rope. So we're not pulling. So convey the value of your relationship. And then conflict don'ts. Don't avoid the issue, but just address that issue. So don't try to I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to withdraw. And don't assume that I know what the issue is. Ask those clarifying questions. In coaching, they drill into us. Don't feel you have this solution, and in counseling, that you have the solution too quickly. Sometimes we think we know what it is, and we don't. So take the time to ask those clarifying questions to make sure you completely understand what's going on. And don't get defensive, right? We talked about that. And try not to bring up past issues. Focus on the present. Oh, I forgot to do this. And don't ignore feedback. Take constructive criticism and try not to interrupt. They tell us in coaching that we should wait up to 8 seconds before we respond when someone says something. That's tough for me. It's very tough for me. So I try to do 5. I'm at 5. One day I'll be at 8. I'm not there yet. But it gives that space. So if they're thinking and they want to say more, they can. And we don't jump into those problem-solving things. All right, so here's a case scenario for you. It's kind of, goofy, but here we go. While at work, you notice that Sandy is not behaving like herself. Yesterday, she was very quiet. Unlike her jovial personality, this morning, she had an outburst in the morning meeting and stormed out of the room when asked about a project deadline. So what do y'all think is going on with Sandy right now? She might be a little bit stressed about this project deadline. You go to check on her to see if she was okay. When you find her, she is glaring at her computer and typing profusely. She's not happy. So what signs of agitation do you see in Sandy? And I'll go back. Change in behavior. She's not acting like herself. I was really writing this about me. So she was acting differently.
Outburst.
She had an outburst in the meeting, morning meeting, and then she stormed out. Yeah, she's typing profusely. She's glaring at me, and I'm like, hey, I'm just checking on you, you know? So she is projecting in that space. So those are the signs of agitation we see, and I didn't even note them all. You guys did excellent. And then how would you now talk to Sandy? You're coming in, she's glaring at you. What are you going to do? Walk back out? What are you going to do?
Offer
Snacks? Hey, she might be hungry. If I'm ever grouchy, offer me snacks if I'm grouchy. That's the first thing you do for me. Give me food. Food is good.
Ask if it's a good time, because if she's stressed about the deadline,
Yeah.
give more of her time, she probably is.
Right. That's a very good point. Hey, is this a good time? Is everything okay?
You could say you're available to listen if she wants to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. So it's more that passive communication. It is not like, what's going on with you? You stormed out of the meeting. What's up? Might be a little bit of aggressive behavior. So just kind of having that passive tone. So when you come into her office, she snaps and says, what do you need? What do you need? Just wanted to check on you, see if you were okay. I'm available if you need. So that's some things that we can say. I would avoid standing in the doorway of her office because, again, how does that make her feel? Trapped, right? I would actually ask, can I come in? Is it okay if I come into the office? Do you have a minute? Something like that. So some things we can do is remind Sandy of her meeting, speaking in calm tones, ask if she's okay, listen for understanding. Now it's your turn to try. Oh, good. I'm doing good. All right. So I have little sheets for you guys that my reason for dealing with traffic, I was like, oh, I didn't print these off this morning. So I'm just going to give you guys one. And what I want you to do is kind of talk through how you would handle each of these situations. So I'm going to start over here in my front corner. What did you guys have?
We had break room brawl.
Yes. I even alliterated it.
Fight.
Let's go.
Am I gonna read it?
Oh, you can read it or you can say what you do. Yeah.
You go into the break room to see two colleagues in intense conversation. You notice that tones are getting louder and hand gestures are becoming more demonstrative.
Not very nice.
What can you do to help de-escalate the situation? There are several things, but the first thing was just to make sure that everyone's safe, because things seem to be getting intense. So maybe interrupting, but like in a calm way, not walking in and saying, what's going on? But just, interrupting and say, hey, is there something that I can, help here? And then I don't know about maybe like removing them from the break room or just inviting them to come into maybe a supervisor's office or just somewhere where maybe their brawl is not on display in front of everybody. So,
Absolutely. And even in our calm tones, we may need to talk a little bit more loudly if they're getting more animated and they may not hear like, hey guys, you guys all right? So they might be screaming. So you may have to talk louder, but not with the sharp tone. That's really good. So we may have to just talk a little bit louder. I won't say elevate our tone because that's not what we want to do. We don't want to do that. Very good. I like it. Taking them to another place. I don't want to speak completely because other people have that, so I don't want to like talk on it too much. All right, what you guys have?
We had a manager meeting.
Oh, yeah.
You are a manager who must speak with an employee about performance issues. As you attempt to speak to the employee, they repeatedly interrupt you with reasons for their performance challenges and tell you it is not fair that they are being singled out. You notice they are becoming agitated by their posture and tone of voice. How can you de-escalate the situation? So we said a few things could be ask them if they want to take a minute in a separate space and then come back to the conversation. We also talked about maybe ask why they feel singled out, maybe elaborate on that and things like that. Another thing we said is maybe it would help to also maybe hear something they were doing well. So maybe kind of divert it a little bit to be like, hey, like, well, I've seen you've done this really well. And maybe that would help de-escalate a little bit because they would hear something positive too.
Absolutely. Those are all good. Great, great, great. I love it. I'm holding my comments till the end, so I'm not saying anything. Those are all perfect. Okay. All right. What you got?
The morning rush. You've had a stressful morning. You've slept through your alarm. You rush out of the house only to be met with terrible traffic. The morning culminates with spilling coffee on your shirt. You have to go back home to change. When you get to work, you're approached about a mistake you made on an assignment. How do you de-escalate yourself before the meeting? Actually, I've had this situation several times where I feel like my day is spiraling out of control. So usually I'll take 5 minutes to myself in my office to put on some soft music or whatever it takes to just kind of reorganize my thoughts and recenter myself, so I feel like when I leave the office, I have better control of my day.
Exactly. I like that you said putting on music. Music is a great way to de-stress, especially calming music. When I'm making a presentation, I have a creative focus music, so I have my Spotify playlist, but when I just want a more calming, if I'm doing counseling or coaching, I have very calm, de-escalating music. So that's a very good one. Thank you so much for sharing. Like I'm going around. If yours has been read, you don't have to reread it. So you had the morning rush as well.
Yeah.
So what did you guys say? Don't all talk at once.
All of us had like different strategies that we used to try to like reset ourselves before we go into a potentially like emotional response. Like mine personally is I'll take like a deep breath and I'll not respond immediately. I'll try to take a second to like collect my thoughts before I respond. And then Lindsay said she'd take a personal day.
I'm out. I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. Yeah.
And Heather said the music also.
Yeah, music's really, really good. Yeah. I like the personal day thing too. I'm not gonna lie. I like that. That's not too
If I'm
bad.
going back home, I'm not coming back.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, well, there is the whole we have coffee on our shirt, right? So like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do about that? So you almost do have to go back home. Yeah, then it's like half the day's gone, you know, then what's the point? What's the point? And if
I live so far away, that 40-minute drive each way.
Working from home for the day. I'm working from home. I actually, Tuesday's my work from home day, so I'll be heading back home after this. All right, what did you guys get?
We also had manager meeting. We liked what Shanna and her team came up with earlier, but we also said we would encourage calmly that they tell us more about their situation or their side of the story.
Good. I like it. All right, we got a couple more.
We almost had a fight in the break room as well. It's always over the microwave and people not cleaning up, but
That's important.
it is every time. We had a lot of similar things to say: safety, calm, kind of a calm approach, just kind of seeing what was going on. I said I would go in and tell a joke and lighten the mood and distract everybody from what was actually going on. But
Teresa said she'd try to show him a snake.
That'll do it. That'll distract me. You show me a snake. That'll distract me. Yeah, for sure. So very, very good. Last but not least, I know it's 10, so I don't want to go over, so we'll let you.
All right, so we had Craig the credit taker.
Oh, you guys were the only one that had that one.
Yeah.
I know. The best for last, guys. The best for last.
You and Craig are working on a project over the past several months. Craig was distracted and unable to come to
hit
several
home.
project meetings. After many long hours and late nights, the project is finally complete. It was a smashing success. After the presentation, Craig tells everyone that he put in so much work on the project, actually carrying most of the load. You have a project debrief coming up this week. What can you do to de-escalate yourself?
My thoughts on that were, rather than confront Craig in front of other people as he's taking the credit, I would ask to have a conversation with him separately, explain to him the things that I thought that I contributed, and then explain to him how he made me feel by taking credit, and then asking for input from him.
Excellent, excellent. What I liked about this one, unlike the others, this was something that was done to me, and now I'm responsible for controlling myself as I communicate that offense. And so this one's a good one. As I was like, I like the credit taker. Not that this happens a lot, but there's times that we're offended, and then we have to go and talk to someone. So we're the one who's agitated. It's us, and so then we have to be able to manage that really well. I like that. When it comes to Craig, it's like, can I control? A lot of these all like, what can I control? Can I control what he's saying to other people? No, I can't physically impair him, close his mouth. I can tell him how I feel about it. That's what I can control. And how I tell him about that, I can control. When I tell him, I can control. So think about what we can and cannot control. Which one was this one? The break room brawl. Yes, it's really good to separate both parties if you can, and that's just, hey, let's go somewhere else and talk. Getting them to be distracted. Like, hey, so-and-so, do you want to head out with me to take care of this real quick? Okay, awesome. And then we go out. Hey, are you okay? How can I help? If you want to talk? That way it just kind of gets them out of that situation. What was our third one that we talked about? I wish I had them all memorized in my brain.
Morning rush.
The morning rush. The morning rush is those are those everyday things that we deal with on a regular basis that we can actually begin to prepare for. Okay, traffic's going to happen. This is something that we, talk about. Two things that we all have to deal with: death and taxes. Traffic. Traffic's number 3. It's going to happen. So we have to have a plan in that case. What do we do to help prepare ourselves for traffic? Maybe we leave a little bit earlier. Maybe we avoid. I worked in downtown Cincinnati. I live in Lebanon, and I would leave at 6:30 every morning. So I did not have as much of the rush, just for my own self. So that's something I can control, is when I leave. I can control what goes on in my mind, the headspace. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that guy cut me off. He's so rude. He's so inconsiderate. He doesn't care if we get in an accident. I'm spiraling. I'm going down. I can say, you know what? Maybe he's late. I'm thankful I was able to stop in time. I'm being a defensive driver. I'll be more aware. Or I'm just going to choose to focus on something else. They call that attentional control. Focus on what you want to think about. I'm just not going to waste the time. I'm okay. We're okay. I'm going to keep going. So that's a big one. Practice that breathing. I went to a mental health first aid class, and they had us practice how long we can slowly exhale. She said, at a stoplight, just breathe out as slow as you can. Just slow breaths for the whole stoplight. And that actually helps to de-stress you while you're in traffic. And then which one was our last one? Was it the manager one? So some things you can do there, of course, keep the focus on the issue, listening to them, asking them, hey, what's going on? But when you go back, like, I completely understand so-and-so, that has to be tough. But what we're talking about today is this issue, because this is a corrective situation. And so in those HR moments, we do have to keep our focus on the issue while being empathetic to what they're going through. Any questions about what we've talked about today? Thank you all for giving me 5 more minutes of your time. I apologize we went over, but I love this part so much. It's one of my favorite. I don't like all the talking, so I'd rather hear you guys talk. Any questions about what we went over today? You want to explore, or you feel like it's pretty easy peasy, right? We got this. You guys are going to go out and handle it well. Awesome. Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. There's a little survey we love to have you guys complete. If you can scan that QR code on your way out, we love to get that. I know I will be talking to your employees, so college kids, summer staff. If there's anything in particular you guys want me to speak to in that training, let me know. I can definitely tweak this to make this more applicable to them and what they'll actually be dealing with. So thank you guys again so much.